Okay, we're ready to go. Okay, hello guys. My name is Kayla Marufo. I'm the president of LPH, and here with me we have Billy Padilla. She's our marketing officer, and also we have two guest speakers here, Dr. Molloy and Dr. Mo, who will be talking to us more about graduate school and answering questions that we may have. Would you like to introduce yourselves, Dr. Molloy, Dr. Mo? A little bit about yourself?
Sure, go for it, Dr. Mo.
My name is Dr. Brian Moe. I'm in my 6th year, I think, now at Biola. I went to the University of Hawaii for my undergrad. I went to California State University, Fullerton for my master's program, which was a terminal master's program. And I finished up my PhD at Louisiana State University. Currently, I am the advisor for LPH, and we're here today to kind of shed some kind of light on what grad school might look like and answer some of your questions.
My name is Dr. Ariana Molloy, and I went to Seattle Pacific University. Well, actually, I went to Northwest College, which is now Northwest University, for my first year, got freaked out about how tiny it was, and transferred to Seattle Pacific University. I took a year off because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then I went to the University of Portland, which was also a terminal master's degree, one of the best experiences I've ever had. And then I took a year off and did some consulting. And then I went to the University of Denver in Colorado for my PhD. My area of research is organizational communication. So I study anything related to messages about work. This could be within the workplace, like everyday communication. It could also be meta or societal messages about what work is that you would see in commercials or advertisements as well. And in addition to being a professor, I take great joy in doing communication consulting, both for our current university as well as other nonprofits, churches, and some business folks as well.
Thank you for reminding me. I study rhetoric and food.
He is a rock star rhetorician.
Thank you, Dr. Mo and Dr. Molloy. So we have a couple of questions here from our survey. And one person who surveyed was a freshman, actually, just transferred to comm, and she asked, what jobs can I get with my major? This is my first year as a comm major, and I don't know what job God is leading me towards this major.
Ariana, that sounds like a calling question.
Yeah, I'm like, I have so much to say about this.
Exactly, that'd be wonderful.
You know, one of the things about college is that you're learning about yourself as an adult, and there are so many different choices you get to make. Do you get cereal in the morning and cereal at night? Do you go for the 3 a.m. donut run? Do you have a bonfire on the beach instead of getting your work done? What kind of friends are you going to have? And most importantly, the job, right? People are asking you, what's your major? What are you going to do when you graduate? Those two questions permeate the conversation among students with their parents and their family members and their friends. And the reason that I'm taking a longer time to answer it is I really want to make sure everyone's listening when I say this. Be very careful about the seduction of certainty. One of the most important things you can do in college is to equip yourself with skills and clarity of passion, which you can apply to multiple contexts. So research actually shows that people change their jobs, literally change their jobs 10 times between the ages of 18 and 42. Now, that might mean changing your job in the same company, but you're altering your professional pathway. And so with communication, the reason sometimes that's a hard question to answer with a short response is because there are so many things that you can do with this degree. And right now that might feel more of a burden because it's vague, but it'll actually be a gift when you graduate. So you'll see a lot of people doing things like nonprofit work. You'll see people in law, in politics, you'll see people in ministry, you'll see people in the corporate sector, and most of the time you'll see folks who have a communication degree being the people that other people want in the room and on their team, because we in communication develop the ability to know how to understand the audience, articulate the message, adapt to circumstances, have resilience in organizational, cultural, political shift, and be the one who sees and hears things that no one else sees and hears. So I realize that's a longer response, but I really want to help us as students and college folks, faculty, recognize that it's not an easy answer because it's a good answer.
That was a good answer. The same thing. I want to echo the same thing because I think maybe not from such a kind of organizational standpoint. Dr. Molloy has a very kind of good understanding of this. Mine's more in the philosophy idea here, just like think about it. Like, what are you doing here, and what do you want to get out of it? Because you're building yourself up. You're building your own skills. Like you're giving yourself what I call like kind of sovereignty to act in the world, right? Because you have tools, and grad school allows that, right? It adds to those tools. It adds to like being the good person in the room that people want there, right? Because you can have all these skills and you can transfer that to anywhere. Do you want to go to work in a business? Great, you're that person that we want there. You want to go into academia further? You want to help with research? You want to do these other things? You want to take it into your personal life? Like there's not a whole lot you can go wrong with as long as you're applying yourself in these positions and leaving yourself open for this opportunity to continue your education in human flourishing for sovereignty. I know it's a lot of big words, but you have options.
I love that. You have options. I think that's the most important thing. And I think sometimes in college, you don't want options. You just want like, I want this path. I need to know where I'm going. But a lot of times research shows that around age 25, 27, when you haven't given yourself those options, there's actually a life crisis that happens. And so it's important to be okay with some of the vagueness. And then also really look for internships and volunteering and service experiences that will help add flavor to your communication degree.
Those type of connections will start to show you opportunities, right?
Yes.
You will start to see into other people's lives of how they're managing and how they're bringing sovereignty and how they're kind of using their own intellectual abilities. And it'll kind of like, I think it's called heuristicism. It's heuristic. It kind of blows your mind.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. I can do that. Yeah. I mean, that's what I did with food. Like I found out I could write in food and talk about things and learn about myself and maybe even help my family by understanding food systems and processes through this communication degree. I'm in. And then I get to teach food as communication classes.
All right, thank you. We have another question from a student asking, how do you find the best graduate school for yourself?
I'll take this one first if you don't mind.
Yeah, great.
So what I did is that I started first based on locations that I felt most comfortable with. I didn't start out by saying, I want to go to the best program. That wasn't for me, right? I wasn't that type of student. That wasn't in my capabilities yet. Like I wasn't going to go apply to Harvard right out of my undergrad. So I looked for schools in my area. And one of the things I found is the Cal State systems really helped me to kind of understand what was happening. They're pretty good at explaining what was required of them. They're very local, and I could even go and talk to them. And so that's kind of where I started out, was that kind of idea. And then once I did that very same thing. I went to those universities. I went to Cal State Fullerton, and I went to LSU that's a little farther away, to kind of feel out what that location might be. I wanted a feeling of the campus. I wanted a feeling of the department that I was going to go into, maybe even meet somebody that will be my teacher so I can see if that personal connection was important. Because one of the things I learned is that personal connection is important. You're not just some student at a university anymore taking lots of classes. You're a student working within a department under people, right? It is kind of a different idea here. And so if you don't like the people you're working with, or you don't want to be in that department because it feels weird, then that should be a good sign. And that's kind of some of the kind of like things I look for.
Yeah, I actually really resonate with that. So when I finished my undergrad, first of all of my friends had like the ideal internship, or they were getting married, because I went to a Christian college. And so that's, what happens. And I was like the only one I knew that moved back home with my parents. And I felt so demoralized, not because I love my family, but just that like I'd been on my own in college and now I'm moving back at home with my parents. And that was actually one of the best decisions I've made for myself. I did cry like once a week for that whole year because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. But it was a good place for me to be, and not to waste money, when I didn't know what I was doing. I agree. Like finding grad school is actually a weirdly hard thing to do. And I also started with where it was located, because I had a lot of community in Seattle, and I wasn't, honestly, I didn't actually pray about it. It was one of those few times where I was like, nope, I'm not going anywhere else. I'm staying here. And so I applied to places in Seattle, even if they weren't a good fit. And then one of my mentors actually said, if you're so stuck on being with your community, you know that Portland is actually 3 hours away, whereas Gonzaga University, which is in Eastern Washington, might be in Washington, but it's 6 hours away. And I was like, oh, okay. So I did apply to Gonzaga first and got accepted there. And I actually put a down payment on a place to rent, but I did not have a peace about it in my heart. And I cried the whole way home. I mean, I'm a crier anyway, so that was not totally unusual, but I didn't feel good about it. And so I drove down to the University of Portland, and exactly what Dr. Mo said, grad school is less about the name of the university in some ways, and it's more about the actual culture and specific faculty you're going to learn from. And so for me, when I went to the University of Portland and I met the faculty, I felt seen and heard immediately. I read their bios and I was like, I got goosebumps, like, oh my gosh, I totally want to learn about what they're doing. And I looked at the classes that were being taught and I was thinking, sign me up. So I think the first thing I would say about grad school is really ask your faculty what they recommend, and go to the places and talk with the chair and ask to speak with current grad students, and really don't do the Googling version. Go to the actual place if you can, or call or Zoom or whatever. And I will say, once I finished my master's, when it was time for my PhD, I did pray about it and I cast the net larger, and I did look for the program that had the best fit for what I wanted to study. So that's a little bit of a different thing.
And in fact, if you guys reach out to some of those universities, they will actually put you in contact with some of those graduate students because they want to recruit you too.
Yes.
Right. So don't just think it's all you having to do that, but you do have to make the first initial kind of contact. LSU was great for my experience. They knew I was out of state. They actually put me up to stay with somebody at their house. They made sure to let me know when classes were. I went to open office hours. And I got to see the campus, which had a live tiger on it. Selling point.
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe not a selling point. I don't know. But like, you know, that kind of thing. So go ahead and just try to go out there if you can and afford it, if it's far away.
Thank you guys. That's really helpful, because I know with me going into graduate school, that's one of the things that I really need to look into for my process. So another question that we have is that, what are the reasons you should go immediately to grad school, or what are the reasons you should not immediately go to grad school?
Boy, this was the question I was asking myself when I was a college senior. I really was stressed about, if I took a year off, would I lose my momentum? And I got like answers on both sides. Everyone has very strong opinions about this. And I'll tell you, I don't actually have a strong opinion about it, because I think it's very dependent on the person. For me, graduating from undergrad was an emotional shift, an identity shift, and I didn't know how to focus on applying for grad school at the same time. So I decided to wait a year. I wanted to work and get some experience. So I worked at a church part-time, and I worked at a nonprofit part-time, and I volunteered with an animal shelter. And through that time, I realized I am bored. And so I started applying immediately. And the reality is, applying for grad school actually is kind of a part-time job. And so you have to be prepared to do that. Now, I will say I would be careful waiting more than a year if you are interested in going, because it is easy to get your roots into life, and it's just a little bit harder to go back. But again, it's not impossible. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a year off. I also think if you have it in you to apply while you're in undergrad, that you should do it, because your brain is already like working really hard, and you've already got the momentum and the flow. And so that's my opinion.
I just want to second that. My was not taking time off, but that was simply because I applied. I had the opportunity and I took the opportunity, but I was okay with doing other things in the process. But, you know, certain paths were opened up. And so I was able to take those things. So I would agree. So whatever your path is, just think about it, pray about it, right? And just know that, you know, a year is okay, but just keep up, be busy in that year. Maybe go to a conference. Maybe think about just kind of starting a project with one of us, like one of your old professors, saying, hey, I may not be going to grad school for a year. I'm still kind of thinking about it. Is there a little bit of stuff I can do on the side? Maybe help out in being a second author on something. I don't know, right?
Yeah. I think that's awesome. I did that. So like, I was so afraid of losing my momentum that I made a list of all the people I wanted to learn from. And I made sure that I met with somebody every other week. So 2 people twice a month. I also gave myself a syllabus, you guys. I put together like a reading list of like academic and spiritual formation and like fun fiction. And I was made sure that I was always reading and staying invested as a student, because I didn't want to stop the learning process.
I don't think God gave me that year off because I'm not that organized.
All righty, last question. It says, which experiences with graduate school or anything particular you personally would like students attending to know?
Yeah, my PhD program at Louisiana State was incredibly impactful because I invested in the community and that area. And somebody that's a little California boy going into the deep South, that was really important and eye-opening for me, especially in periods of time now where, like, if I didn't have those experiences, it would be harder for me to kind of see some of the questions that are being raised in contemporary society, specifically regarding Black Lives Matter movements and other kind of racial equality issues. And so take advantage of where those things are located, where your schools are located, to try to get more out of the experience than just reading a bunch of books. Like, I know that's just part of it, right? But invest in the community, invest in that. I got to go to the Mississippi Delta with the anthropology department, and that kind of stuff still shapes my worldview today because of how impactful they were. And especially going with a bunch of grad students, it's geeky, it's esoteric at sometimes. But man, do they point out things that I would never had the access to before, right? Because they just have this wealth of knowledge that we got to share in.
Good. I can speak from my own experience too, and that is, and we both went to terminal masters. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are about this, Brian, but I loved that because we had the whole focus. If you go to a grad program that has a master's and a PhD, which that's wonderful, but you're a little fish when you're in your master's, and then you get to be the big fish. But for me, when I went to a terminal master's program, I felt really fed into and seen. That was also my first experience of school in a secular institution. I'd gone to a Christian school my whole life, including undergrad, and it was a very smooth transition. They were very respectful of my faith, but I also learned how to listen well. In my PhD program, it was a much more rigorous experience and also much more secular, and I had to defend my faith a lot and learn to really listen well. And it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. My friends were completely different worldviews, religions, orientations than I had ever had. And it really helped deepen my understanding of life. But it was also hard. So one thing that I did is when I decided to go to my PhD, I went there and I said, Lord, I'm not one to like throw out an ultimatum, but I need to find a church community if I'm going to go to this university, because I didn't know anybody in Denver. And I was very afraid to move to a place that I didn't know anyone in. And I did. I found a church that trip and stayed in my community there and also at my university. So I think that was really important. Here's the second thing I would suggest for grad school. Go to the conferences. Because when you go to academic conferences, you realize how humongous the discipline of communication is and all of the different ways that you could study it. You find out that you can apply your passion, your interest through the lens of communication in so many ways. And it's literally like going to the Oscars and Emmys. You get to see all like the movie stars of comm, the people that you've been reading about. And, you know, I like super freaked out the first time I was there because I met the people that I admired and I was like, oh my gosh. But I would say the conferences are both exhausting because there's a lot of ego and a lot of like puffing themselves up, but it's also eye-opening. I mean, you really feel like you're going in the international world of comm in some ways. So I guess to summarize, really take advantage of grad school, your community there. Be open to learning as a Christian, be open to being quiet and listen, and then go to conferences.
To echo some of that terminal master's program, like, again, it was very much that similar thing. It also showed me that there was a real difference with people who are going to get their master's program to go directly into a workforce and those that are going to higher academics as a job form or type of research. So it gave me that really clear distinction of how I wanted to go because I had options. I saw people doing both.
Oh, I also think that really this might be my personality. I'd be curious to know what you think, Brian, but locate a faculty or two that you really want to learn from and go after them. Just like bring them coffee, ask to be the research assistant, like make use of them, because I think in some ways more than the classes, it's the people that you get to learn from. And so really become their apprentice. Yeah.
In fact, what I did when I applied to LSU, I didn't do that in my master's program because I didn't know. But when I applied to LSU, I sent papers from my master's program to 4 or 5 teachers. And what happened was, and this is good and bad, is that the teacher I thought I was going to work with didn't end up reading my paper before I got there. And the person I didn't think I was going to work with at all did. And then he told me most of my work was bad, except for,
Oh, no.
and it made me go, oh, I can really learn from this person. And they cared to read a paper from somebody that may not even go here. I think that showed something about their ethic. And I was like, you know what, I may not show the same interest exactly, but like I share in that kind of vision of how we're going to go about this learning activity. And I was able to really find somebody there that really fit, you know, me to some
That's
degree.
so cool.
And me starting to fit to them. Like I wanted to be adapted to them as well. So that was a good fit.
That's great.
Well, thank you guys. That's all the questions that we have right now. And I really appreciate all you guys' expertise and your personal experiences. And lastly, if you guys have any closing remarks that you would like these people to know, now's your opportunity.
Yeah, I think, sorry, I'm just going to go here. But one of the things I think that needs to be done is figure out the financials, right? Seriously, go look. What are the university's options in terms of finances, TA-ships, RA-ships, GA-ships? I didn't, going into LSU, did not have a TA-ship with the department. I found one through the athletic department, right? And it gave me a different look at the university, how to mentor students, how to do different things. And so while some pay options were closed off to me at first, others were open. And as long as I was willing to look, it is there. And grad school can be a way to be an apprentice and not take on tons and tons of debt. You will. But imagine you're investing in yourself in those things. So go out and find that money, figure out how it's going to work for you, and go after it. Fill out your FAFSA in January as well. The sooner you fill out your FAFSA, the better chances you are at getting that money. And that's really important. Now, be smart with your money, but you need to make sure that you take care of some of those financials.
I think graduating from undergrad can be very overwhelming and disorienting. And if you're a learner and you really do want to go on, it's easy to let other people's opinions about that choice influence your sense of self. So if people say things like, oh, you're just going to go back to school, you're going to do more school, are you afraid to like go into the real world? Well, we know as communication folks that the concept of real world is a very pejorative term. It's called discursive closure, which means you close down the conversation by using language to say what you have to say doesn't matter. Instead, I would say, if you have an interest in learning more, trust that passion, trust that, and go do it. You could either get a job, at least for your master's. Your master's will tell you whether or not you want to get your PhD because it's 2 years. And I know 2 years might sound like a long time, but it actually goes by so fast, so fast. And so I would say, go get your master's, decide if you like it, and then you'll have a master's degree. You could either get a job for 2 years that you don't like, or you could get a master's degree. And the thing about grad school is you're not just in the classroom, you study the world, you study case studies. And so you're getting experience. I really want to reinforce that. You're not just enclosed in a classroom, you're getting life experience through your classes that will benefit you no matter what. I think another thing is neither of my parents finished college actually. And I didn't know anything about applying to grad school, and I felt really, really alone. And so I would just say, if you're in that place, find someone to help you. You don't have to do this alone. Yeah, come to us. And it's exhausting and it's exciting. And oh my gosh, for me, this is what I'll close out with. When I was an undergrad, I didn't want to be that annoying student. So I wanted to participate all the time, but I would look at my watch and say, okay, when was the last time I talked? Because I don't want to be the person that like dominates the conversation. In grad school, you don't have to do that. Everyone is a front rower. Everyone wants to be there. Everyone wants to stay after class and talk about it and to grab a beverage and talk about it further. Everyone wants to be there. And so for me in grad school, I was an okay student in undergrad, but I think it's mostly because I didn't like busy work. And so in grad school, you get to unfurl your academic wings and you get to soar. And for me, it was life altering.
To piggyback on that one as kind of a second last comment is that that is also a unique transition in your life where you become in conversations that you want to become in. And then you got to figure out when you leave that community, how to have conversations again, right? It's pretty impressive how involved you can be into those things and how great it is. You just got to realize that not everybody's involved in that. And you're a very privileged person to be able to do that. And that is a wonderful gift. Just keep that in mind. It was one of my little like weird things of kind of come back home going like, I read Foucault, and people are like,
Yes.
I don't want to talk about it, and they're like, okay.
This is another small thing I realize we're going over, but I don't know, as a woman, it was an interesting thing to get a graduate degree because when I was single, I was actually told to not tell people on dates that I had a grad degree and that I should probably not use really big words. And so I realize this is not really part of this workshop, but I think it would be an interesting conversation to talk about the gendered implications of education. It's an interesting component.
Well, thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to come here and ask and answer all our questions that we have about graduate school. And thank you guys for coming and watching this recording. We really appreciate both of you guys, Dr. Mo and Dr. Molloy, and we hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you guys so much for
See you
watching.
later.
Thank you, Kayla and Billy, for putting this on.